Has your horse spooked out of nowhere, suddenly bolted, bucked without warning? 1 second everything was fine, and the next second it wasn't. We've all been there, and it genuinely feels sudden in that moment. Usually, though, there's a lot of communication we missed beforehand. It might have been from your horse, or it might have been from your own nervous system. But the signals were probably blocked by information overload. So your brain didn't process them as important information. Your horse may have changed their breathing, muscle tone, rhythm, posture, or attention. You may have started gripping, holding your breath, rushing your aids, or using too many aids. Maybe you mentally checked out there for a second. The final behavior was sudden, but the process leading up to it probably wasn't. And how you begin to notice that process, that buildup, is what we're going to talk about today on the Thinking Horse and Rider. Welcome. On today's episode, we're talking about how most riders think that safety in the saddle comes from reacting more quickly. And I should say safety around horses in general, not just in the saddle, but on the ground too, right? Catch the spook, stop the bolt, sit the buck, take control before the horse does. We do need to have these useful emergency skills if bad things happen. And we need to practice these skills long before the emergency happens and frequently before the emergencies happen. And with experience, you can avoid these emergencies altogether. It's not because experienced riders have a quicker reaction time. Often, they just notice things happening sooner, so they catch it quicker. We tend to treat riding problems as technical problems and horse communication issues as behavioral issues. Like the rider needs stronger legs, or the horse needs to be more forward. The rider needs better timing. The horse should listen better. The rider needs to use their aids more effectively. The horse needs more discipline. But skills are only accessible when your nervous system and your horse's nervous system can use them. You can know exactly how to ride a transition and still be unable to coordinate your body when you're frightened. Your horse can understand the canter cue and still be unable to respond thoughtfully when they're in a new environment. This isn't disobedience. It's dysregulation. This is why asking the questions, does the horse know how? Does the rider know how? Are incomplete. We also need to ask, what state does the horse need to be in to access what they know? And what state does the rider need to be in to access what they know? So many times, these two questions are overlooked in horse and rider training systems, or they're dismissed as being woo-woo, weak, or soft, just someone not being able to handle it. I see a lot of accidents happen that could be avoided when students are taught this type of logic from their trainers. Yes, it's old school thinking. I grew up in an old school system. I know what that's like. But I never stopped asking questions. And after 15 years of dealing with emergency situations and public safety, I learned there are many more factors at play than weak riders and disobedient horses. So let's start with a simple way to explain how the nervous systems work. The main function of any nervous system is to keep you alive. Your nervous system and your horses is in a perpetual state of asking, are we safe? If we're not, we need to do something about it. If we are safe, we can rest, nap, Netflix and chill these days. But many humans live in a perpetual state of distress, like low to mid-level distress, brought on by our own lifestyles. And we often cause our horses to live in the same way. Humans stack demands. We often perceive these as outside demands, but they're really internal, right? The endless to-do lists, phone pings, bills to pay, families to care for, houses to clean, stalls to muck. Our modern everyday life keeps our nervous systems running in partial threat mode. And it was not designed to deal in partial threats. The nervous system was designed to deal with a threat, meet a single demand, and then recharge. So when something changes in the environment, the body would mobilize, respond, and when that challenge passes, the body goes into recovery mode. So if we use a really simple example, like being a caveman and running from a predator, a tiger starts to chase you, you run away, you find some place to hide, the tiger goes away, now you need a nap. Your body recovers, you get up, you go about your business, gathering things to eat. That's not how we live today. We always need to be doing the next thing. Instead, today, we continue to stack pressures and demands on ourselves. We increase something called the allostatic load, which simply means that our bodies are not getting adequate recovery time from one stressor to the next. Have you ever felt like you just needed a minute to stop doing everything? Or you needed a nap before you could tackle the next task? You probably do. Your body and mind need to recover. One of the first things we do in my online course is practice a short breathing meditation before we go meet our horses for the day, every day. It gives you a chance to clear some of that allostatic load and show your nervous system what you want to focus on right now. And yes, your horse can suffer from a high allostatic load too. Things like social isolation and limited movement, unpredictable handling by humans, travel, environmental changes, conflicts around resource guarding, pain or poor metabolic function. All of these can lead to the horse having multiple pressures on their nervous system as well. Remember, the nervous system is not something that we control consciously, at least not easily. So chastising yourself for not being able to handle your stress level is just as ineffective as saying your horse should be able to handle it. The nervous system is designed to be constantly gathering information from the outside environment, from the body, from past experiences, current expectations, and all the other living beings nearby. This is all done without any input from your prefrontal cortex or your thinking brain. Your nervous system and your horses are continually trying to determine what requires your attention for survival and what can be ignored. When something is perceived as challenging or threatening, stress systems mobilize resources from your body. Heart rate may increase, muscle tone changes, attention becomes more selective, energy becomes available for action. That response is not inherently bad. In fact, it can be a great help when we need to perform our best. The problem is that as your arousal rises, the brain becomes less flexible. And this is why top athletes, soldiers, anyone who wants to master a technique practices it so many times in so many different ways. We need to make that muscle memory. We need to encourage our bodies to perform when our minds shut off for a second or they get less flexible. The problem for many amateur riders is that you don't have enough repetitions in different environments to rely on your muscle memory. This means your brain needs to work faster and clearer than your professionals. I bet you weren't expecting that bit of truth today. But let me say it again. Because you have less reps, your brain needs to work better than the professional who helps you. You might think that's an impossible task, but you can spend just a few minutes a day training your brain to improve your riding instead of always lamenting about that extra ride you didn't get in this week and promising that next week will be better. Unless you're planning to drop all of your other responsibilities and run away with your horse, it's not going to change. Stop waiting for it to change and start training your brain to work for you. What you lack in time on a horse, you can make up for by training your brain to tune out the noise. I know it's not an instant solution. It's not the quick fix. It's not the one thing that makes the angels sing, but it is one thing you can control and work on, regardless of the weather, regardless of whether your horse is missing a shoe, regardless of whether or not they're lame today. After all, this isn't the Instant Solutions podcast. It's the Thinking Horse and Rider podcast. I'm expecting you to think, and I'm expecting you to practice thinking better. For instance, many people think that stress is inherently bad. Actually, distress is bad. Eustress is good. We need stress. You can be relaxed and excited. Your horse can be alert, but not dysregulated. The problem is many amateur riders confuse energy and nervous system regulation. I think this often leads to the go but don't go conundrum I love to talk about. For example, we all hear that our horses need to be forward or in front of the leg. But the image that I think this conjures up for most amateur riders is of a horse either dragging someone along that can't be slowed down, or an image of a trainer doing battle with a horse trying to get it in front of the leg. When you see those images in your mind, your nervous system says, nope, that is definitely not safe. And we need to avoid that at all costs. So at the next lesson, when your trainer is yelling at you to be more forward, to get your horse in front of the leg, your logic brain realizes that you need more energy. But your nervous system says, no, you don't. Your aids get conflicting and you don't even know it's happening. Then your horse gets crappy because they're getting conflicting aids and they're confused. Horse crankiness now sends your nervous system up another notch or two. And then what happens? Your trainer says, let me get on and get this horse forward. Now you see that battle ensue again, right? Your trainer gets that horse forward. And even if the little competitive gremlin inside of you says, she showed that horse, she got him more forward, and now he'll listen to me, your nervous system was still like, oh my God, I never want to have to do that. So your horse might listen to you a little bit better a few minutes after that, maybe even the next ride. But then, pretty short order, that goes away. And you're back to the same struggle. It's not a disobedience from the horse. It's not because your logic brain isn't effective. It's because your nervous system is holding you back and you haven't made yourself aware of it. So then our nervous system and our logic brain start dueling again. And it's like this constant hamster wheel, right? Groundhog Day. What situations in your horse life, riding life, do you feel like you're on a hamster wheel or it's Groundhog Day? I get it. Balancing all of these things is really difficult. And I know you think your trainer was born with a gift. And they probably were born with some things being easier for them than they are for you. But it doesn't mean they're going to transfer any of those skills to you by some sort of telepathy. It's something you have to take responsibility for and something you have to learn. And it's best started off of your horse. Remember, horses and humans need activation to perform, but you don't need that activation to activate your nervous system in a negative way. A horse cannot jump, canter, work cattle, run cross country in a completely relaxed and still state. A rider can't compete, learn, or make rapid decisions without energy and arousal. So our goal is not permanent relaxation. The goal is a flexibility or a fluidity in our brains and our bodies to mobilize when needed and recover when the demand passes, and to notice those differences when they arise. The nervous system is not designed to keep you relaxed. That's another thing many people misunderstand. It is designed to keep you safe. It wants to know if you're safe, and then it's going to help you respond appropriately if it feels like you're not. As I said earlier, this means biologically safe, not I logically know that I'm safe, but I'm still scared to death. I know a lot of amateur riders who live in that space. I see you, I feel you, and you can work through it. Fake it until you make it does not apply here because your nervous system knows, and so does your horse. Horses were born to feel the energy around them. That's why that part of their brain works better than ours. In fact, your lizard brain, which controls your nervous system, the amygdala, answers the safety questions before you're even conscious of it. That's why you can't fake it until you make it. People logically think, I know I'm safe. But the nervous system isn't logical, it's predictive. Its job isn't to determine what's true, its job is to determine what is likely. That means it pays enormous attention to patterns. Your brain loves patterns, patterns of thinking, patterns of muscle movement. Your brain says, "Ooh, I fell off here, so I should hold on tighter." And now your right leg starts to do that funky, grippy thing. Or your nervous system says, "This horse bolted once." So you automatically go to DEFCON 6 while your body tries to find safety in the fetal position while you're riding. My trainer yelled at me for dropping the reins, so now I instinctually hold them with a death grip and keep my alertness on DEFCON 9. Maybe you think, oh, God, I embarrassed myself the other day, so I'm going to overthink all the ways I could be embarrassed again while plastering this Joker-looking smile on my face and wrenching my shoulders back and locking in my arms so I look happy and strong. You know that my horse bucked last spring, so I hate riding when it's windy thought? Even if consciously you know everything is okay, Your nervous system may still say, nope, last time that didn't end well. Prediction is a huge concept. Our brains are prediction machines. They're constantly preparing you for what to expect, not what is actually happening. If you've done any studying on anxiety, you've probably often heard that you've probably often heard it referred to as the fear of what might happen or fear of the future. That's true for horses too. Their nervous system works off prediction. I know, you've heard that they live in the moment. But if that were totally true, would they be able to remember where danger was in the wild? There's no way to change the way our nervous systems work inherently, but we can learn to override or squelch the signals with practice and repetition. Training your brain for success, not fear and failure. After all, your brain is trying to keep you alive. It's your best friend. It receives so many signals, and it receives so many signals every moment that prioritizing survival just simplifies things. The other part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part we often think of it as the human brain, but other mammals, including horses, have it too. It's the part responsible for planning, empathy, learning, creativity, and flexible thinking. This part becomes less active under stress or threat of not surviving. Meanwhile, your older brain regions like the amygdala become more dominant. Why? Because they work faster. Your prefrontal cortex requires more processing time. Think of your old AOL dial-up internet. If a lion is chasing you, you don't want to hear the whirs and the beeps and the shh. You want to run. It's brilliant biology, but it makes for less than optimal horsemanship. Remember, under any stress, the brain will trade accuracy for speed. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you might remember the speed versus latency episode. Speed teaches faster too. That's great when we're teaching something positive. But when we've learned something more negative, it's what makes it harder to stop doing those things. And your brain makes up these patterns of movement so quickly, they're so ingrained, it's really hard to undo them. In those millions of bits of information that your brain is receiving all the time, only a tiny fraction of them reach your awareness. That's why awareness is the first module, or seed, as I like to call them, in my online course, Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart. If something in today's conversation is making you think, okay, but how do I actually apply this with my horse? You're exactly why I created Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart. It's the course for the horse lover who loves their horse deeply, but sometimes feels like they're missing part of the conversations. Maybe you're overthinking your decisions, getting inconsistent results, or realizing that the traditional advice you've been given no longer feels right for you or your horse. Inside the course, I teach 7 essential elements of partnership that often get skipped in ordinary riding lessons, from awareness and communication to autonomy, play, boundaries, and confident leadership. This isn't about throwing away everything you already know. We're going all the way back to the beginning. It's about adding the understanding and nuance that help your existing skills work better. You'll learn how to create more clarity, responsiveness, willingness, and connection without relying on more force, more pressure, or trying to become someone you're not. You can learn more about Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart through the link in the description of the episode. But let's jump back into it. Your nervous system decides what gets through your conscious awareness, not your prefrontal cortex. Your nervous system, if your nervous system is feeling safe, more subtle information reaches your consciousness. You notice the smaller things. Your horse exhaled. You're holding your breath. One ear flicked. Your stupid right hand is clutching again. The strides shortened. You curled up your shoulders. Your horse's back stiffened. You started gripping with your knees. If you're stressed, this sensory gate narrows. Now the brain says, you don't have time for all those small things. You need to pay attention to the scary thing. After all, you might not survive this trip to the barn. It's not a crazy thought. Your brain has legit concerns. The nervous system doesn't differentiate between small threat or big threat very well. It's threat or no. The in-between comes in your prefrontal cortex, but when the two aren't communicating, there's no in-between, right? It's 0 or 10. So once you bring your brain's concerns into your consciousness, you can address them. You can start working on them. But if you're still going off that fake it till you make it logic, you will be wrestling with your nervous system the entire time. Instead, you could sit inside the barn and show your brain that it can let go of those negative thoughts you came with, start to focus on what you want to accomplish at the barn today. Think about getting the access back to those more nuanced parts of your brain and how they will help you when you're working with your horse. It's only a few minutes, and if a few minutes can make your ride better, wouldn't you want to take that opportunity rather than take longer having a worse time working with your horse? I like to think about things like activation of the nervous system, speed, responsiveness on a scale of 1 to 10 in people and in horses. It's just an easy way to get that range, right? That's hard for your nervous system and your amygdala to process. We're going to use the prefrontal cortex to process the range. So let's think about level 1 being a horse or a human who's in a fluid state. Their brain is flexible, they feel safe, they can rise to the occasion of jumping around or doing a dressage test. They're going to rise to the occasion and then be able to return to their calm and happy selves. Level 10 is blind panic mode. And I want you to imagine you have two riders. Rider A begins on our scale at a 2 out of 10. She's riding around the showgrounds. Her horse notices something, and her nervous system rises to a level 4. But she can still breathe, observe, feel the rhythm, make decisions, adjust her plan. So she uses a reflex to relax cue that settles her horse, and then her own nervous system settles, and they continue riding around the showground, warming up for their class. She's learning, her horse is still learning, and she can influence the horse in a positive way. Rider B gets to the horse show and is already at a 6 out of 10. She's already had a difficult day. She slept badly. She's worried about picking up the right canter lead. The horse didn't want to get on the trailer. She's a little late and she's trying to ride correctly and not embarrass herself in front of all of these people. Her horse notices something and she immediately is at a level 8. Now, the horse, being confused and not knowing why they need to run away, automatically meets her anxiety level because something must be really scary. The rider then notices the horse get more tense and starts gripping the reins and her knees, and this sends the horse cantering around the arena in what feels like a completely out of control moment. The horse didn't create all of that activation. They were just following the lead of the rider, who began much closer to her threshold. You can also have the opposite happen, where the horse starts out at an 8 and then it turns into a 10. It's not the size of the stressor that matters. It's the level you were at when the stressor arrived that really matters. Horse and rider, too, are going to have a much less productive session, which will in turn likely leave them both feeling worse afterwards. That adds to the allostatic load. It also adds to the negative prediction because the nervous system is going to predict the next time you'll have the same type of episode. Horse and rider 1, who are going to feel like they ended on a good note and their prediction for the next ride will be better. What I see happen a lot is a process of riders trying to survive their rides. So every day they're trying to survive. And they figure that if they do it enough times, it will make them confident or brave. And they'll find the skills they want to improve their riding. But what ends up happening is that each ride becomes more and more fraught with danger because the brain is never predicting a good experience. The, the nervous system does not get to a point where it's like, ah, this was great, and next time will be great too. Next time will be better. It's always next time could be worse. And so you're constantly stacking bad experiences. Even if they're not really bad, they're not really great. They're not leaving you with that warm, fuzzy feeling. Probably not leaving your horse with a warm, fuzzy feeling either. You're stacking more bad than good. This is where you can really break the cycle and break it pretty easily. First, you need to find out, do you need to break the cycle or do you need to break the cycle for your horse? Sometimes it's both of you, but think about how can you both have a happy and confident experience that leaves your brain predicting the same thing for next time. I feel like that's actually the number one question we should ask with every ride. Not can you do this movement? Can you do this flying lead change? Can you jump this height? How can you and your horse have a happy and confident experience that leaves your brain predicting the same or better for next time? Keep that idea in your mind as we move on to some common misconceptions that distort people's judgment here. Big one is that calm does not necessarily mean relaxed. Relaxed does not mean low energy. Often I find riders that say they want calm horses, but what they really want is a regulated horse. One that has the flexibility of mind to feel tension and find a way to dissolve it. The same thing they should be doing. These riders interpret calm as low energy, slow movement, no emotion, no excitement, a horse who never reacts, an almost sleepy state, bomb-proof. But nervous system regulation is flexible, not flat. Flat can actually mean dysregulation. And I've seen plenty of horses go from 0 to 10 in the blink of an eye. People can have that same level of dysregulation too. Remember, It's always calmest before the storm. I'd rather see an alert and responsive horse and human than a calm, bomb-proof one. You and your horse, and any human, any horse, can be excited and regulated, alert and regulated, competitive and regulated, cantering and regulated, playful and regulated, powerful and regulated, relaxed and regulated. You can also look quiet while being completely overwhelmed. You can look bomb-proof, but the gears are turning a mile a minute inside. A rider can freeze, stop breathing, and become rigid without appearing outwardly dramatic. A horse can stand still while being mentally absent, shut down, or unable to respond. So calm is not enough information. It's not reliable information. In fact, some of my calmest looking friends have terrible anxiety, grind their teeth, suffer from stomach ulcers. Their allostatic load is through the roof. So how do we define regulated then? Well, a regulated horse or human can generally take in information, respond appropriately, shift their attention, adjust their behavior, recover after an activation, and make choices rather than relying on automatic reaction. Calm is not the absence of energy. Calm is having access to your energy without being controlled by it. Upper level dressage horse has to be activated, yet be able to return to relaxation after each challenging movement. They have to continuously take in information, respond, shift their attention to the next movement. A Grand Prix show jumper has to find a lot of activation to get over the big jumps, but they have to be regulated enough to make tight turns and take direction from their riders. To me, a regulated horse is a responsive horse. A sensitive horse or a forward horse is not the same thing. And that leads us back to the go but don't go conundrum. We talked about it earlier. Just like calm and relaxed are not the same thing, speed and responsiveness are not the same thing. A horse can be moving very quickly while being completely unavailable to the rider, and that's the image that a lot of amateurs get in their head when they think about going forward. A horse can also be moving very slowly or not at all and still be completely unavailable to the rider. I see this with a lot of amateur riders and their bomb-proof horses. One of those horses might be forward, but neither one is really rideable. At least not in the way that I like my horses to be rideable. One is speed without communication, the other is calm without communication. I like to think of forward or in front of the leg as how responsive is my horse? How available are they to me? Basically, what is the horse's mental and physical availability to respond to an intention or cue? A truly forward horse can respond promptly without rushing, maintain energy without constant nagging, come back when asked, go when asked, change balance, adjust tempo, and remain mentally present. A forward horse doesn't just have an accelerator, they have steering, balance, and brakes. Kind of like your car. Because if your car didn't have steering, balance, and brakes and it just went forward, we wouldn't be getting very far. Forward is not miles per hour, it's availability. In front of the leg doesn't mean running out from underneath you. It means the brain in front of your leg is functioning. It would be dangerous to have a horse who was highly energetic but not responsive. It's also dangerous to have one that is seemingly calm but unresponsive. You definitely do not want a horse with more speed than communication, but you don't want one standing around predicting all of the ways you might try to make them move either. For me, regulation and responsiveness go together like peanut butter and jelly. People assume that responsiveness is simply a training issue, a disobedience. If they're not responsive, they're not obedient. I think that's less common than dysregulation being the culprit because a horse who is regulated has attention on you, they're available to respond. Horse that does not, they might have their attention on you, but they may be fearful. They may be predicting something bad, or they may be predicting a confused state. And so they're not responsive just because their nervous system is like, I don't know what's going to happen here. We got to go DEFCON 10. So when you notice that your horse is not as responsive as you'd like, it's a great time to drop into your thinking brain and wonder why, instead of just getting out the stick and trying to get them in front of your leg or handing them over to the trainer. The bottom line is you want to learn how to have the feel. You want to learn how to have a responsive horse that's also relaxed, and you want to be a responsive and relaxed rider. It's called feel. It's not just an inherent mystical talent that you were either born with or not. It's all about your perception in the saddle or around your horse. Feel is really important on the ground too. It's part interoception, feeling what's going on inside your own body, and part exteroception, feeling what's going on outside of your body. With interoception, you can notice your heartbeat, notice your breathing, muscle tension, jaw tension, butterflies, sweaty palms. Sometimes we feel those, but we don't really acknowledge them. We don't notice when they started. We don't realize that we're holding our breath until somebody tells us. We don't notice we're gripping or clenching. You know, all those things that your trainer tells you you're doing that you don't think you're doing them. You just don't know you're doing them because your brain is working on other things besides your interoception. You have to shut something off to be able to have that sensation of what's happening in your own body. It is a learned skill. If you can't perceive your own nervous system, it's much harder to perceive your horse's. Stereoception is feeling the tension come through the rein when your horse clenches their jaw, or you ask for too much bend in one direction. Noticing that outside shoulder stepping into the outside rein. Feeling the horse's barrel come against your outside leg. Feel the inside rib cage yield under your inside leg. Feel the back pushing softly or feeling the back being rigid against your seat. It's not that amateur riders can't feel those things. It's that they don't have the capacity because their brains are so busy doing other things, like saving your life or following instructions from your trainer, trying to remember that course or dressage test. Part of training your brain is making as many of those things happen without having to think about them as you can. Memorize that test. Teach you and your horse autonomy around movements. That's called self-carriage, by the way. Learn to read when you or your horse is going into save your life mode. That's your experiment for this week. Notice your threshold. Notice when your nervous system starts to get a little, notice when your horse starts to feel the same way. When either of you feel that way, don't push past it. Go back. Find a place of relaxation. So if it happens to you in the canter transition, Abandon the canter transition, go back to your trot, find some relaxation, try again. Don't push past it the second time either. If you notice the anxiety again, come back to a state of relaxation, approach the threshold again. Yo-yo yourself between, I'm a little bit freaked out here, and okay, this I can handle. Play in the space between over and over again. It's not going to be as boring and tedious as you think it is. Eventually, you'll notice that you start to spend more time near your threshold. You'll actually start to think about what's happening when you approach that threshold. Oh, my body tenses up when I ask for the canter. I pull the right rein. I do something else weird. I lean to the outside. Or you'll just start to notice. Don't push past it just yet. Just celebrate your win of noticing and end on a good note. Soon enough, you'll find yourself accidentally stepping over that threshold and not even noticing. That is confidence and regulation. That will leave your brain and your horse's brain predicting a better experience in the future and more nervous system regulation. So until next time, keep noticing, keep asking questions, and most importantly, enjoy your horse. Happy riding. All right, horse fiends, thanks for spending time with me today. If this episode got your gears turning, don't let the conversation end here. Come join us inside the Happy Horse and Rider Lab, my free community on school.com, where you can share what you're noticing, ask questions, and connect with other thoughtful horse people. We're going to keep exploring how these ideas apply to you and your horse. If you're ready for more structured support, you can also find the Reconnect, Rebuild, and Ride with Heart inside the school community classroom. Don't worry, the link is in the show notes. I can't wait to see you there.